In a busy part of Abuja, Nigeria, there was a small compound where two single mothers lived. Both women worked hard every day at the bustling markets of the city to make a living. Mama Tola had a son named Tola, who was 16 years old, while Mama Amara had a daughter named Amara, who was 15. The bond between Mama Tola and Mama Amara was something everyone in the neighborhood admired. The two women were so close that people often mistook them for siblings. They worked as traders in the market, shared meals, and even dressed alike on occasion. Their friendship was a strong foundation for their small families, and they always stood by each other through thick and thin. This closeness naturally extended to their children. Tola and Amara had grown up like siblings themselves. They attended the same school, though in different classes, and even did their homework together at the small wooden table in Mama Amara's kitchen. On many nights, Tola would sleep over at Amara's house or Amara at Tola's. They would talk until late, laughing about the funny things that happened in school or whispering about their dreams for the future, and sometimes their mothers would tell them bedtime stories. Tola and Amara remained close even as they grew older. Despite their differences in personality, they stuck together, and their bond seemed unbreakable. The neighbors often joked that the two of them were destined to be together forever. But things were about to change as Tola prepared for his secondary school final exams. It was a quiet evening in the compound, and Mama Tola had prepared a simple dinner of jollof rice and fried plantains. Tola sat across the small table from her, picking at his food. Something was clearly on his mind. "What's bothering you, Tola?" Mama Tola asked, her eyes warm but sharp. Tola hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Mama, I want to ask you for something." Mama Tola raised an eyebrow. "What is it, my son?" "Well," Tola began, avoiding her gaze. "I want you to buy me a phone." "A phone?" Mama Tola repeated, her voice rising slightly. "And what do you need a phone for?" Tola looked up, trying to gauge her reaction. "Mama, all my classmates have phones. They use them for school, for assignments, and to stay connected. I'm the only one who doesn't have one, and it's hard to keep up sometimes." For a moment, the only sound in the room was the clinking of cutlery. Mama Tola's face was unreadable, and Tola began to worry that he had pushed too hard. Finally, she sighed. "Tola, a phone is not a small thing. But I'll make you a deal." Tola's eyes lit up. "What kind of deal?" "If you can get good grades on your final exams," she said, pointing her fork at him for emphasis, "I will buy you a phone. But only if you prove to me that you're serious about your studies." Tola grinned, relief washing over him. "Thank you, Mama. I promise I'll study hard and make you proud." The deal was set, and from that day on, Tola threw himself into his studies with a determination he hadn't shown before. Amara noticed the change and teased him about it, but deep down, she was happy for him. Tola's focus on his studies left him with less time to spend with her, and Amara started to feel the distance. She didn't say anything at first, convincing herself it was only temporary. The long-awaited day finally came. Tola wrote his final exams, pouring all his efforts into each paper. When the results were released, his hard work paid off. He passed with flying colors. Tola couldn't contain his joy, and neither could Mama Tola. True to her word, Mama Tola bought Tola a brand new phone. It wasn't the most expensive one, but it was sleek, modern, and more than he had hoped for. At first, Tola used the phone for what he had promised, learning new things, researching topics he found interesting, and practicing skills. But soon, the novelty of the phone took over. He spent hours exploring apps, playing games, and watching videos. Since he was done with school and had a lot of free time, Tola often found himself glued to his phone. Every day when Amara came home from school, she would find Tola waiting with his phone in hand. They would sit most of the time in Tola's room, laughing as they watched funny videos, played games, or browse the internet together. They started watching movies together on the phone, sharing earphones as they sat close. Sometimes, they would lose track of time, completely immersed in whatever game or video they were enjoying. One fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the mango tree, Tola and Amara sat together inside Tola's room. Tola was scrolling through his phone, searching for something new and interesting to watch. As he scrolled, an advertisement suddenly popped up on the screen. The thumbnail was colorful and eye-catching, with bold letters promising exclusive content. Out of curiosity, he tapped on the ad. It led them to a site neither of them had seen before. The screen filled with videos that were unlike anything they had ever watched. At first, Tola's finger hovered over the back button, but something about the site held their attention. "Maybe we shouldn't be here," Amara whispered, her voice uncertain. "It's just a website," Tola said, trying to sound confident. "We'll just look for a minute." But a minute turned into 10, then 20, and before they knew it, an hour had passed. The videos were strange and captivating, pulling them in like a current they couldn't swim against. They clicked from one video to the next, each more intriguing than the last. "We should stop," Amara said, her voice barely audible. Tola nodded, but deep down, he wasn't sure he wanted to. The next day, they returned to the site. Soon, it became a daily habit. Instead of playing games, studying, they spent hours locked in the room, staring at the small screen. At first, it felt like a harmless secret, something exciting they shared. But as the days turned into weeks, the videos started to affect them in ways they didn't understand. Tola became more withdrawn, and Amara grew quieter. The laughter that once filled their evenings was replaced by long, uncomfortable whispers. One afternoon, Amara sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Tola, don't you think we should stop?" she asked, her voice trembling. Tola didn't look up from the phone. "Why? We are not doing anything wrong." Tola finally looked at her, his expression unreadable. "It's just videos, Amara. It's not a big deal." It was a quiet afternoon when Amara returned from school, her bag slung over one shoulder. Tola was already waiting for her in her house, sitting at the table with a notebook in hand. Over the past few days, he had been helping her prepare for her final exams, just as she had once encouraged him during his. They spent a couple of hours working through assignments and reviewing class notes. Tola's explanations were clear and patient, and Amara felt a bit more confident about her exams. When they finally finished, she leaned back in her chair, stretching her arms. Tola looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. "Do you ever think we can try doing the things we saw in those videos?" Tola asked Amara. "Tola, I don't think we should be talking about this or even practicing it," Amara replied. "Why not?" Tola pressed, leaning forward slightly. "We've already watched them. Isn't it normal to be curious?" Amara shook her head, her voice firm. "It's not right, Tola. Those are just videos. They're not real life." But Tola didn't let it go. Over the next few days, he brought it up again and again, always asking the same question. Each time, Amara tried to change the subject or brush him off, but Tola's persistence wore her down. One day, as they sat together in her room, Tola asked the question again. This time, Amara didn't respond. She stared at the floor, her mind racing. "Amara," Tola said softly. She looked up at him, her face pale. "I don't know, Tola," she whispered. "I don't know if we should." But Tola's curiosity and pressure didn't waver. And eventually, the day came when they decided to act on what they had seen. It was one of those rare days when both mothers were running late. The market had been particularly busy, and they had stayed behind to sort out extra sales. Tola and Amara, left alone in their adjoining houses, spent the evening as they usually did, talking, laughing, and sharing the phone. But this evening was different. The curiosity that had been building in Tola for weeks finally reached its peak. With their mothers absent and the house unusually quiet, the opportunity seemed perfect to try what they had been watching in those videos. Amara hesitated at first. "Are you sure, Tola? What if someone comes home early?" "They won't," Tola reassured her. "They're always late on days like this. Trust me, no one will know." Reluctantly, Amara agreed. Despite the nervousness that churned in her stomach, she found herself following Tola's lead. They locked the doors and closed the curtains, ensuring no one could see inside. But the experience was nothing like the videos. Amara felt pain, confusion, and a mix of emotions she couldn't put into words. Tola, too, was unsure, fumbling through the act with an awkwardness that didn't match the confidence of the people in the videos. When it was over, they sat in silence, avoiding each other's eyes. "Are you okay?" Tola asked softly. Amara nodded, though she wasn't sure if she meant it. "I think so." From that day, things began to change between them. What started as a one-time mistake turned into a habit. They continued meeting in secret, repeating the act whenever their mothers were away. Each time, the feelings of guilt and uncertainty grew, but they pushed them aside, telling themselves it wasn't a big deal. But secrets have a way of unraveling, and theirs was no exception. One evening, Mama Tola finished her business in the market earlier than expected. She decided to surprise Tola and Amara with some fresh fruits she had bought at a discount. Smiling to herself, she walked up to Amara's house and knocked on the door. When no one answered, she tried the handle. It was unlocked. Stepping inside, she called out, "Tola. Amara. Are you here?" She heard faint noises coming from one of the rooms and walked toward it. When she pushed the door open, the sight before her made her drop the bag of fruits in shock. "Tola," she screamed, her voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "What are you doing?" Tola and Amara froze, their faces pale as they scrambled to cover themselves. Amara burst into tears, burying her face in her hands. "What is this?" Mama Tola demanded, her voice rising. "In Amara's house? Under her mother's roof? Is this what you've been doing behind our backs?" Tola tried to explain, but his mother didn't want to hear it. Her anger was like a storm, filling the small room as she berated them for their actions. Amara sobbed harder, and Tola could feel the weight of what they had done crashing down on him. When Amara's mother returned that evening, she immediately sensed something was wrong. The usually lively atmosphere in the compound was heavy, and the sight of Mama Tola pacing outside with a deep scowl only added to her unease. With trembling hands, Mama Tola explained what she had seen. As the words spilled out, Amara's mother's face turned pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. No, that can't be true," she whispered. Amara's mother stormed inside, calling for her daughter. When she found Amara sitting in a corner, her face streaked with tears, she felt her heart break. "Amara, tell me it's not true," she pleaded. Amara couldn't meet her mother's gaze. Through sobs, she confessed everything, from the videos they had watched to the moments they had acted on their curiosity. Amara's mother sank onto a chair, her hands covering her face. She couldn't believe her daughter, the child she had raised with so much love and care, had done something so shameful. That night, both mothers sat down to discuss what had happened. The weight of disgrace hung heavy between them. They had been like sisters for years, sharing everything, but now, they could barely look at each other. The following days were harsh for both Tola and Amara. Their mother spared no effort in disciplining them. Tola's phone was confiscated, and he was forbidden from visiting Amara or even leaving the house unless absolutely necessary. Amara faced similar restrictions. But despite the discipline, the shame lingered. The once cheerful compound felt cold and tense, the bond between the two families strained beyond repair. It didn't take long for gossip to start. Though the mothers tried their best to keep the incident a secret, the unusual behavior of the children and the sudden tension between the women raised suspicions among the neighbors. And so, they both made the difficult decision to move out of the compound. Within a week, Tola and his mother packed up their belongings and relocated to a different neighborhood. Amara and her mother followed suit, moving to a quieter part of the city where no one knew them. For the first time in years, the two families were separated. The once close bond between Tola and Amara was severed, leaving behind a silence that neither of them could feel. Thank you so much for watching my video today and taking the time to share your thoughts. I truly appreciate your support. Let me know where you're watching from. I love hearing from viewers all over the world. What part of the story stood out to you the most, and why? I can't wait to read your comments and engage with you further. See you in the next video.